This is TY back with another video. And today, I came up with a video earlier talking about Conor Benn, and I talked about why boxing is going the way that it's going. I'm just sitting thinking about, how far boxing has fallen, man. How far has it fallen? Like I said, when I first started watching boxing, I was like 14 years old. This was like back in 2004 when I first started watching. And I remember watching Roy Jones Jr., but that was at the time when Roy was pretty much on the downside. The tail end of Mike Tyson's career. I didn't get a chance. I remember when I was 12 watching Mike Tyson fight Lennox Lewis, and I was rooting for Mike Tyson. And when Mike Tyson lost, I was hurt. I really wanted Mike to win. But at that time, I had somewhat knowledge of boxing. I knew who several boxers were. I knew who Oscar De La Hoya was. I knew who Floyd Mayweather was. I knew who Roy Jones Jr. was. I knew who Mike Tyson was. I knew Bernard Hopkins. I knew James Toney, Felix Trinidad. Like I knew like a lot of fighters at that time, but I didn't really start getting like into it until about 2004. And then I started picking up, and I didn't start knowing more about the business until later on, like the stuff behind the scenes and things like that. Like there's stuff that I learn every day that I'm like, wow, I didn't even know stuff like this happened at that time. But yeah, 2004 was the time when I basically got into boxing, and I was 14. That's when I kind of fell in love with the sport, and I wanted to know more about the sport, and I started, learning more about the fighters, learn about the fighters of who they fought, and even watching documentaries and stuff. That's what I started getting more intrigued in that. Then I started watching Floyd Mayweather, do his dominance. I remember watching him, and I really got a good look at watching Floyd when he fought Arturo Gatti. And I was like, wow, this is an amazing fighter. He was fast, he was quick. He was nothing to play with. And I remember watching all his fights, ever since then. I was a fan of Floyd. I wasn't much a fan of what he did as far as, with the flashiness and all that. But as far as him inside the ring, he wasn't, he was going to win. It wasn't guaranteed, but I was rooting for him because I knew there was so many people that didn't like him. And I knew that there was a lot of people that was wanting to see him get beat up, get knocked out. But I was the one that didn't want to see that. I wanted to see him win in every fight. But to go on to what my topic is basically, how boxing has fallen. How boxing has gotten to where it used to be about, people knew certain fighters, you know what I'm saying, that's outside of the boxing world. Like all of us that are hardcore fans know these fighters. But if I ask several of my friends today who several fighters are, they don't know who these fighters are today, And it's a shame because a lot of these guys have potential to be names like Floyd Mayweather, to be a Roy Jones Jr., a Mike Tyson. They have the personality. Some of them do have personality, but some have the skills in the ring to have the ability to be able to be superstars. But there's a lot of things that go into boxing, as we see now, that has basically, disrupted boxing, to what it is today. You got these promoters. These promoters are one of the ones that get in the way of, of seeing, great fights. All these tune-up fights and all these, fights have to be, oh, well, we have to, we got to make sure he fights his mandatory first before he fights, the guy we've been asking him to fight. Now I'm reading an article that Better Biev might fight a mandatory before he fights Bivol. So it's just ridiculous, man. This is these fights are not being, nobody's pressing for these fights, the way that they should. And nobody's pressing these promoters. Nobody's giving them these hard, tough questions to ask. Like, well, when are we going to get these fights? And, nobody's giving them the receipts that, hey, you said that this fight was going to happen such and such. Why ain't you making this fight happen? But again, you got these promoters that get in the way. They're in the way of these fights. Some of these fights are predictable. We know what's going to happen. There are some that that are unexpected, but still, it's just ridiculous. The promoters get in the way. I just feel like, there's too many belts. There should be one. To me, in my opinion, and this is just my personal opinion, I feel like there should be one belt in every division. It should not be 4 belts in one division. It should be one. I think that is just too many belts. I think it's ridiculous because you got too many guys that are claiming to be champions. Like I mentioned about my friends, like, they don't know who some of these fighters are, but then they might say, well, I thought this guy was the champion, and I'm like, nah, bro, he is the champion, but this guy is the champion in the same weight class too. So now they're just like, well, what the hell, you know what I mean? Like, they're just like, okay, what, it's too many belts. It's confusing some fans. The casual fans, it confuses them the most, but us hardcore fans understand. But it's way too many belts. Too many, things get in the way of these belts because you got mandatories, you got things that you have to be obligated to do. It's just too much, man. You got to pay the sanctioning fees, all that type of stuff. Then somebody, like I just said, somebody moves up and like, hey, they're the mandatory now. You got to fight them. So if you don't fight them within a certain amount of days, then you could be possibly stripped. It's just ridiculous. Then you got the main thing that has been going on in boxing today that really has been just ridiculous is the ducking. It's just all this ducking, man. It's just ridiculous. These guys are avoiding each other. These guys don't want to fight the best fighters, or they'll I'll fight them later down the line, and then by the time you fight them, it's too late. It's ridiculous, man. I remember when Roy Jones and Bernard Hopkins had their little, their argument back on that historical HBO segment where, they was talking about the split. And you would have thought, okay, well, maybe this fight, could happen, because that fight should have happened, I don't know, but back in the 2000s, somewhere in the 2000s, it should have happened. That fight didn't happen until, I think it was like 2010 or something like that. I might be wrong, but it was way too late though. The fight was way too late. They was way past their primes. I want to say they was already in their 40s at the time when they fought, and it was a sad case. It was hard to watch, but again, and then of course the Floyd Mayweather Manny Pacquiao one. That fight was 5 years too late. Both of those guys were older, even though Floyd was the oldest one, but it wasn't, as we know, the fight was not a good fight. It wasn't entertaining. It wasn't what it was deemed to be, and that's the problem with boxing, is that these guys wait too long, but before you know it, it's too late. A guy loses a step, a guy don't look the same way as he did 3 years ago. And that's the problem. All this milking it, all this, we got to try to, hype this fight up. We got to stop doing that. Sometimes you just got to just make the fight happen. But it's just too many guys, though, that in this sport is just ducking, that's avoiding fighting the big fights, as we see right now at the 135 pounds. We seeing it right now. You seeing Devin Haney, that is undisputed champion, calling out Ryan Garcia, Lomachenko, Tank Davis. He called out T.O. And all these guys have avoided this man. They don't want to fight him, and all these guys are ducking him. They're doing all they can to try to get away. And this is the reason why I believe that this is why the sport of boxing is continuing to die. It's just ridiculous, man. This is why the sport that it really is hard for me to love, because it's just getting to the point where it's getting sad. It seems like every day a boxer that comes into the sport is just growing to be a guy that's just gonna duck all the smoke. There's only but a handful of guys that I can tell you that, that I could probably count 3 or 4 of them on my finger that I could tell you that really want smoke with everybody. They're willing to fight anyone in their weight class, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to be great. But other than that, all these other fighters, all they're here for is to chase a bag, as they say, or get the bag, or whatever they want to say nowadays, or get the money and be Instagram models and be TikTok stars. That's all they want to be now. This is no longer about fighting the tough competition. It's no longer about being in legacy fights anymore, because it's too much of a risk for them, not only just for their ego, but for their record. Everybody wants to be Floyd Mayweather and, take on and want to get all the luxurious cars and money and women and clothes and all this other stuff, but they're not willing to put in the work to do it. I mean, there was a time where Floyd had to be the pretty boy Floyd first in order for him to be money Mayweather. I mean, he's had a heck of a career, but a lot of these other guys, you can't even name not one person, but maybe one person on their resume, and then that's it. And then that's all they got. That's all they got. And it's getting sad. It's getting ridiculous. It's getting to the point where it's like, man, something's gonna give. Boxing is definitely not. It's just in a bad space. It's getting worse to me, because it feels like these guys are not trying to fight each other. Maybe this year things will change, but the way it's looking like it's just gonna be another year of what we've been getting for the last 3 or 4 years. But I like the video. Shout out to the whole entire LDBC. And let me know what you guys think about this video. What y'all think? I mean, y'all think the sport's going to change? Do you think the sport's going to get better? Do you think the sport is continue to going down on its down slope? What do you think? Like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below. Again, shout out to the whole entire LDBC. Peace.